The art stand had been there since sunrise. Same wobbly folding table. Same uneven leg that shifted every time someone brushed past it. She sat behind it on a wooden stool, hands resting carefully in her lap. Not from shyness, but because keeping them still made the shaking easier to hide. Her name was Emma, 17 years old. Buzz-cut head. Pale lavender dress hanging loose on a frame that had lost 20 pounds in 8 weeks. The cobblestone street stretched out in front of her, narrow buildings rising on both sides, cafe awnings fluttering in the morning breeze. Tourists with cameras, couples holding coffee cups, delivery trucks rumbling past. Nobody stopped. The paintings leaned against plywood backing. 12 of them. Coastal harbors. Sailboats reflected in glass-still water. Villages at dusk with lights beginning to glow. Quiet scenes. Escape scenes. Places she'd never been but desperately wanted to go. At the base of the table, a cardboard sign. Handwritten in black marker. Original artwork helping fund cancer treatment. People glanced. Some slowed their stride. Read the sign. Faces shifted. Sympathy flickered. Then they walked faster. One woman stopped. Mid-40s, expensive sunglasses, designer purse. She studied a harbor painting for 30 seconds. Then looked at Emma. Really looked. The buzz cut. The pale skin. The way Emma's hand trembled when she reached for her water bottle. "You're so brave doing this," the woman said softly. Emma nodded, forced a small smile. The woman walked away without opening her purse. Emma didn't feel brave. She felt invisible. By 10 in the morning, her legs had gone numb, lower back aching from the stool, nausea rising in slow waves. She stood to stretch. The sidewalk tilted. She gripped the table edge, steadied herself, sat back down. Hours passed. No sales, just glances, just pity, just the weight of being seen but not helped. She stared at one painting. A lone sailboat heading toward the horizon. She whispered to it, "Keep going." If this story is already hitting your heart, don't forget to like this video, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Welcome to Starred Secrets. By late morning, her body started arguing with her. Hands shaking openly now. Not just trembles. Full vibrations she couldn't control. Her chest felt heavy. Each breath shallow. Cold sweat dampened the back of her dress despite warm sun. She needed to go home. She knew that. But going home empty-handed would mean admitting this wasn't working. And she couldn't admit that. Not yet. An elderly woman approached. Tailored coat, silk scarf. She stopped in front of a painting. A coastal village tucked into cliffs, windows glowing amber in fading light. "This reminds me of Carmel," the woman said. Emma's voice came out quiet. "I painted it from a photograph. I've never been there." The woman's eyes moved from the painting to Emma's face. Noticed the buzz cut, the hollowed cheeks, the way Emma's hands rested protectively in her lap. "How much?" the woman asked. $80. The woman opened her purse. Fingers touched her wallet. Paused. She glanced at the cardboard sign again. Then back at Emma. "I'm going to think about it," she said. "I'll come back if it's meant to be mine." She didn't come back. Emma's shoulders dropped. She wrapped her arms around her midsection. Closed her eyes for 3 long seconds. Opened them. Rearranged the paintings to fill the empty psychological space. A young man passed by. Early 20s, gym bag over his shoulder. He slowed, looked at her. Not at the art, at her. "You should really be resting," he said. "Not out here." "I'm fine," Emma replied, voice steadier than she felt. He shrugged, kept walking. But she wasn't fine. When she stood to adjust a frame, dizziness blurred her vision. Metallic taste filled her mouth. She sat back down hard. 3 hours, no sales. She counted paintings. 12. Counted people who'd stopped to look. Maybe 40. Counted dollars she needed. Thousands. Her eyes landed on the sailboat painting again. "It's still sailing," she told herself. She lowered her head, elbows on her knees, breathed through exhaustion. Just 2 more hours, she whispered. But what she didn't know was that someone had been watching her struggle all morning, and in exactly 90 minutes, everything would change. 3 days before the art stand existed, Emma had been sitting in a hospital hallway, oncology wing, 3rd floor. Vinyl chairs bolted to the wall, fluorescent lights humming overhead, the smell of antiseptic mixing with cafeteria coffee drifting up the stairwell. She'd just finished a treatment session. Too exhausted to sit in the crowded waiting room, needed quiet, needed to not see other people's worried faces. Her parents were inside the billing office. Door cracked open 6 inches. She hadn't meant to listen, but voices carried. The billing coordinator's voice. Calm. Professional. Clinical. The total for the next round of treatment comes to $47,000. Insurance covers 60%. The remaining balance is $18,800. Silence. Then her father's voice. Strained. We can take a second mortgage on the house. Her mother's voice. Breaking. There's nothing left to mortgage. We already borrowed against it twice. The coordinator again. We do offer payment plans, but treatment cannot proceed without a deposit of at least $5,000 by the end of next week. Emma pressed her back against the wall, hands over her ears, but she couldn't unhear it. Her father and mother emerged 5 minutes later. His face gray, her eyes red and swollen, neither looking at each other. They sat on either side of Emma. Her mother took her hand. Everything's handled, sweetheart, her mother said. Don't you worry about anything except getting better. Emma nodded, pretended to believe the lie they needed to tell. That night she couldn't sleep, stared at the ceiling until 2 in the morning, then got out of bed, pulled canvases from under her bed frame, 12 paintings, all from art therapy sessions during early treatment when her hands still worked normally. She lined them against the wall, studied them, did the math in her head. 12 paintings, $75 to $100 each, maybe $1,000 total if she sold every single one. Not enough to cover treatment, but enough to help. Enough to ease the crushing weight on her parents' shoulders. She whispered into the dark. I won't let this destroy them too. It wasn't bravery. It was the only thing she could still control. The next morning, she made the cardboard sign, told her parents she needed fresh air, and walked to the busiest street corner she knew. By early afternoon, her body stopped cooperating entirely. Her hands shook so violently she couldn't hold a paintbrush when a tourist asked her to sign the back of a piece. Vision tunneled, edges going dark. Chest tightness made each breath feel like lifting weight. Cold sweat soaked through her dress. When she tried to stand, her legs wouldn't support her. She dropped her water bottle. It rolled into the street. A stranger picked it up, handed it back. You okay? He asked. Emma forced a smile. Just tired. The stranger's face showed discomfort. He walked away quickly. She noticed it then. People weren't just ignoring her anymore. They were avoiding her, crossing to the other side of the street, parents with children steering kids away from her table. She'd become the thing people didn't want to see. A well-dressed man in his 50s stopped. Expensive watch, tailored suit. He examined her paintings carefully, pulled out his phone, took a photograph of her best piece, the sailboat heading toward the horizon. Emma's heart lifted. He's going to buy it. Do you have a website? He asked. I'd like to see more of your work. Her voice barely came out. This is all I have. He nodded, smiled politely, walked away. She realized what had just happened. He'd wanted the image for free. Emma stared at the sailboat painting, the one she'd whispered to all morning, the symbol of keep going. But now it looked different. Not sailing, sinking. The painted boat looked as exhausted as she felt. Her knees gave out. She slid off the stool onto the cobblestones. pretended to adjust the paintings so passers-by wouldn't notice. But she wasn't adjusting anything. She was folding into herself, head down, arms wrapped around her ribs, trying not to cry in public. She whispered to the paintings, "I'm sorry. Sorry for not being good enough to sell. Sorry for failing her parents. Sorry for thinking this would work. Sorry for being the burden that was destroying her family." She reached for the first painting, tried to unhook it from the display. Her hands shook too badly. She sat back down hard on the stool. "Just 5 more minutes," she told herself. "Then I'll pack up and go home." But she knew she was lying. She knew she'd tell her parents she didn't feel well enough to stay out long. Knew they'd know the truth. Knew she'd failed. The street noise faded. Her heart beat too loud in her ears. The taste of giving up bitter on her tongue. Then footsteps stopped directly in front of her table. She didn't look up, assumed it was another person walking past. A voice. Male. Older. Rough but quiet. "These yours?" She looked up slowly. A tall figure blocked the sun. Tan leather jacket, worn but expensive. Silver hair. Weathered face with deep lines around the eyes. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the paintings. Someone nearby gasped. "Is that—" Emma's exhausted brain couldn't process what her eyes were seeing. Not yet. But in 3 seconds, her entire world was about to shift. Another voice cut through the air, louder. "That's Clint Eastwood." Emma's stomach dropped. She looked up again, focused through the fog of exhaustion. The face, the posture, the presence. Clint Eastwood, standing in front of her art stand, hands in his jacket pockets, studying her paintings like they mattered. He didn't acknowledge the murmurs, didn't look at the people pulling out phones, just stood there, taking his time, looking at each piece. His eyes landed on one painting, the harbor scene, boats at dusk, still water reflecting fading light. He paused there, nodded slightly to himself. "You paint these yourself?" His voice was quiet, direct. Emma nodded, couldn't find words. "Recently?" She swallowed. "Last month, before treatment got harder." His eyes flicked to her buzz cut, her pale skin, her trembling hands, then down to the cardboard sign on the ground. No pity crossed his face, just recognition, just understanding. "How much for this one?" He pointed at the harbor painting. Emma's voice barely worked. $80. She cleared her throat. Tried again. 80. He pulled out his wallet, counted bills, handed her 5 20s, $100. "Keep it flat," he said simply. Emma tried to lift the painting. Her hands shook violently. The frame slipped. He reached out, steadied it. "I got it." He lifted it off the display himself. She fumbled for wrapping paper. Couldn't manage it. He waved it off. "Don't need wrapping." He held the painting, then looked at her directly, leaned slightly closer. Voice lowered so only she could hear. "You've got real talent," he said. "This isn't easy what you're doing." He paused. "Let that settle." "But you're tougher than you think." Emma swallowed hard. Tears threatened, but she wouldn't let them fall. "Thank you," she whispered. Clint Eastwood straightened. "Take care of yourself." Not a pleasantry, a command. He nodded once, turned, painting tucked under his arm. Walked away the same steady pace he'd arrived. No photos, no fanfare. Just a transaction. Just truth spoken quietly. Emma sat frozen, staring at the $100 bill in her shaking hand. Not crying from sadness anymore. Something entirely different was happening inside her chest. And what happened next shocked everyone watching. The small crowd didn't leave. People who'd watched Clint Eastwood buy a painting now approached Emma's table. Not out of pity, out of curiosity, out of something else. A young couple stopped first. The woman pointed at the coastal village painting. How much? 75, Emma said. We'll take it. Before she could wrap it, a businessman in his 40s stepped forward. The sailboat, is it still available? Yes, $100. Sold. Then the elderly woman from earlier that morning, the one who'd said she'd think about it. She returned, face flushed. I'd like the Carmel painting, and that one. She pointed at a second piece. Both of them. In 90 minutes, 7 paintings sold. Emma's hands shook as she counted the money. Once, twice, 3 times to believe it was real. $640. When the last customer walked away, Emma's legs gave out. She slid down the wall behind her table, sat on the cobblestones, laughing and crying at the same time. Couldn't tell which emotion was winning. She packed the remaining 5 paintings carefully, folded the wobbly table, money tucked safely in her dress pocket, hand protective over it. The walk home felt different, each step lighter than the morning. Still exhausted, still sick, but carrying something new. She walked into the kitchen, emptied her pocket onto the table. Bills scattered across the surface. Her father stared. Her mother's hand flew to her mouth. What did you do? Her mother whispered. Sold my paintings, Emma said simply. She told them everything. The 3 days at the stand, the people who walked past, Clint Eastwood stopping, the sales that came after. Her father didn't believe her until she showed him photos strangers had posted online. Her mother broke. You shouldn't have to do this. We're supposed to take care of you. Emma took her mother's hands. You have been. This is me taking care of us. That night, Emma counted the money again in her room. $640 wouldn't cover treatment, wouldn't save them from ruin. But it was something. Proof she wasn't just a burden. The next morning, the phone rang, and everything Emma thought she knew about that day was about to be proven wrong. A private foundation, a medical coordinator, a calm voice on the other end. We heard about your situation. An anonymous donor has agreed to cover your full treatment costs, all of it. Emma sat down hard on the edge of her bed, hands over her face. Her mother cried, not loud, but like something impossibly heavy had finally lifted. I didn't know how we were going to save you, her mother whispered. Emma's voice broke. You don't have to anymore. 3 months later, Emma walked back to the same cobblestone street. No table this time, just a sketch pad. She sat on a bench, drew the buildings, the people, the light. A woman stopped. You're the girl who sold the paintings. Emma nodded. How are you? The woman asked gently. Emma smiled. Still here. The woman walked on. Emma kept drawing. Across the street she saw it. Her harbor painting. Framed. Displayed in a gallery window. A small plaque underneath. Sold. She smiled. Kept sketching. The art stand had never been about making enough money. It had been about being seen at the exact moment she felt invisible. About one person stopping when everyone else kept walking. About being reminded she was more than her struggle, and that was enough. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button, comment below, and tell us where you're watching from, and subscribe for more incredible true stories. This is Starred Secrets. Thank you for watching.